Tonight's teleseminar or webinar is about anxiety. And I chose this as a webinar to have a chance to connect with the community about different ways that I've been thinking about what anxiety is in our bodies and how we can use an understanding of relational neuroscience, and also the way that we use language to change the brain and change our bodies and change the relationship between bodies and brain. So I chose this subject as a way to explore some of the evolutions of the vow work that I've been working on this year, and time traveling into the future. Many of you are familiar with time traveling into the past, but I've begun to experiment with sending the resonating self-witness forward in time to hold us and be with us in our experiences that are difficult. So here we are. I welcome you if you would like to start experiencing a little bit of change with your anxiety, and if you'd like to learn a bit about the relational neuroscience. I am a neuroscience geek, and so I'm an interface between research and all of us, and it's an exciting place to be, but a little geeky, and so I try to translate it for us to have an easier time understanding. You're in the right place if you'd like to feel relaxed in your skin, and if you want to know what to do when you feel that uncomfortable agitation and buzz from anxiety. I most often work with this myself when I wake up at 3 o'clock in the morning in a complete panic about whatever it is that I'm worried about. So I get lots of chances to work with anxiety. Also, a good place to be if you like to meet whatever your body's experience is, with honoring and warmth, and to have trust that there is important information that your body wants you to know and acknowledge about the truth of its experience. And if anxiety is something that you have a sense is really impacting health and well-being, which it can so fully, it's important to begin to collect every possible strategy, because sometimes one strategy will work, sometimes another will work. The beauty of working with the material we'll be working with tonight is that as we sink more deeply into doing the practices, those practices themselves are creating neural pathways that continue to support us. So it's like whatever little gains we can make are gains in this moment, but they're also long-term gains because we're building and growing and resonating with and nourishing the very neural pathways that we need to support decreased anxiety and increased health and well-being. And also, there may be those of you who, like me, have had a consistent experience of meditation being a little tricky, that when you stop long enough to breathe and bring your attention internally, that it's like permission for the lacerating and critical self-witness to go to town on you. So if that's an experience that you have, then this is an excellent practice to begin to step into, because it transforms that. And then finally, the practices that we'll be working with tonight are very sweet to also help us begin to notice unnoticed anxiety, because that can also be a key, especially when we're dealing with any kind of addiction. With addiction, we become so practiced at turning to the addiction as soon as, before we even know that anxiety is beginning to bubble up. So these practices are also incredibly supportive to bring us into a new relationship with ourselves that supports the healing from addiction. So this is me, and this is a little bit of a advertisement for the book that I wrote, Your Resonant Self. And for those of you who enjoy things, to try things out before you buy them or instead of buying them, you can download the free guided meditations on the website, which is listed here, yourresonantself.com. And the kinds of meditations and exercises that we're doing tonight actually are a huge part of this book. And our plan for this evening is to begin to look at body-based resonant language, bringing body-based resonant language to self-empathy, especially empathy for the cells, is really interesting and important when we're working with anxiety. We'll all do a visualization of caring for the heart. We'll explore what time traveling to the future looks like and how to do it. And we'll pay attention to any sacred vows that come up, especially vows to be really vigilant, seem to be quite important when we're working with anxiety. You may, if you have worked with me before, remember that we make nervous system contracts, that we make agreements that are nonverbal when we're very small, to use our nervous systems to manage our interface of self with the world. So the experience of having anxiety can sometimes be something that we automatically shift into in order to manage a dangerous world. So we'll look at that as well tonight. We'll be looking at a brief introduction of various roots of anxiety and understand the difference between the two flavors of anxiety and how it's easiest to come into self-empathy and resonant and precise and warm self-understanding when we start to distinguish these two types of anxiety. And you'll see us working with some of these approaches live with the folks who have so kindly agreed to allow us to see what happens with their nervous systems when we bring this approach into relationship with them. And there's some material about next steps for those who want to dive deeper into how to bring resonance and warmth for ourselves and develop our resonating self-witness. So for those of you who don't know me, which is about 30% of the call, hello, I am glad to meet you. I discovered the power of nonviolent communication, self-empathy, and empathy from others in the 90s. And at that point, I was really kind of stunned by the changes that I felt, but I had no real sense of why the changes happened. And because I'm a little obsessively curious, I dove in full-bodied to relational neuroscience as it started to develop the work of Daniel Siegel, interpersonal neurobiology. Then into the 2000s, the decade of the brain, people got lots of funding to buy functional MRI machines and started looking at what brains do in relationship. And my meeting with Daniel Siegel and Bonnie Badenoch really was key for me, and it gave my nonviolent communication self-empathy skills rocket fuel. And things started to change in a way that I really enjoyed. And this is a picture of me in Poland with my wonderful translator there in a university auditorium. When we bring the warm resonance with together with our knowledge about the brain and a turning toward the self, the capacity to turn toward the self and look at ourselves with affection and warm, precise understanding, then we really begin to experience changes that are different from anything that I ever experienced before. Now we'll talk a little bit about what anxiety is. Anxiety is a disquiet and an agitation, a physical agitation that lives in the upper torso and sometimes the neck, sometimes the jaw, but has a very intense location in the chest. And when we say to people, how do you know that you're anxious? They'll say, there's a buzzing in my chest, or a kind of a buzzing in my torso. Sometimes people have a gravelly sensation in the stomach. So sometimes it moves down into the abdomen. But what it's usually pointing to is some relationship with the future, either the immediate future or the not too distant future. There's an anticipation in some way of danger. And one of the flavors of anxiety is fear. And fear is connected to physical external threats and social external threats. So it doesn't have to be a sense that we're going to be hit or that we're physically in danger, although certainly with the experiences of nature this last year, with fires, with floods, there can be a strong sense of nature being involved. But it can also be social disquiet. It can be financial disquiet. These are all different kinds of safety that are important. And when our system looks into the future and does not anticipate safety, then anxiety is one of the responses, fear anxiety is one of the responses that we can have. Another response can be dread, which a sweet friend of mine recently, Jim Mansky, recently described as the anticipation of shame. So we can pay attention to any differences that we're experiencing between anxiety and dread as well. With fear, we have a sense of clear threat. And with nervousness, there's a sense that there's no real action that we can take, or that there's not a clear stimulus that we can respond to. So anxiety kind of lives in the area of not a clear stimulus. It's like fear, there's a dog snarling at us, and our body is in, full, like first maybe a tonic immobility, then get the hell out. That's our fear response. It's much easier to clear. It's much easier to deal with. It moves through the body when the stimulus disappears. But one of the key things about anxiety is that we may not even know what the stimulus is, and we never quite have a sense of it clearing our body. But the other flavor, I had said there were two flavors of anxiety. The other flavor, and this is from the research of Jaak Panksepp, a brilliant emotions researcher who died this last year. And anxiety, he discovered, can also arise from loneliness. And this is much less understood and less well known. And for humans and other mammals, the anxiety that comes from loneliness or abandonment feels identical to the fear anxiety that comes from some compromised sense of safety. So we are essentially unsafe when we're alone, but sometimes if we do self-empathy for ourselves about safety, it never manages to really touch the anxiety, because the anxiety is at its root not about safety at all, but rather about aloneness that needs to be acknowledged and known. This table here, which says Understanding Our Emotional Circuits, is from Panksepp's work. And it shows the basic emotional systems here on the left, and it shows what the affective states are for all mammals, and then how that gets turned into human experiences. So, for example, animals don't feel contempt or hatred, but humans with the capacity for thought can turn anger and irritability into contempt and hatred. And mammals can feel anxiety and phobias and panic. And humans will turn that into worry. So anxiety is shared with all mammals, and as humans we'll take it and turn it into worry. Panic is here shown as separation, distress, and sadness. This was from Panksepp's early work in 2006. He published a later book in the 2010s, and in that book he began to identify the panic circuit as the panic/grief circuit, which makes it easier for us to follow and understand. So our two main areas of focus when we begin to work with anxiety are fear and panic grief. And whether we're experiencing anxiety that's connected with grief and panic, or whether we're experiencing anxiety that's connected with fear, there are some possible starting points that we can step into to begin to understand the root causes of anxiety. And some of those causes are, this is not a complete list, but these are starting points. A cellular memory of our forebears, epigenetics. This can be seen with people who, for example, have grandparents who underwent terrible experiences like the Holocaust or genocide, or even the experience of people being in the Twin Towers in 9/11. We see that the epigenetics for the response to stress get changed in the experience of the grandparents, and we can see the epigenetic changes persisting all the way into the grandchildren. The research into the third and fourth generations has not yet been done, so we don't know so much about how much epigenetic change there is in great-grandchildren and great-great-grandchildren. But the amazing epigeneticist Moshe Zhyf, SZYF, you can look him up on YouTube, says that when we look closely at the epigenetics, at the sheath of protein that covers the DNA, that it actually records difficult events much the way that a tree trunk records. When you cut a tree trunk and you see the rings, you can see similar markings on the epigenetic sheath, on the protein sheath that surrounds the DNA. That there are that in the next 40 years we will be able to read the trauma history of our families from the protein sheath that surrounds every bit of our DNA. So there is a great importance in acknowledging the impact of history on our families that can be a root cause of states of anxiety. Also, if our mother was very anxious or in a dangerous or unsafe situation, especially during months 3 to 6 of the pregnancy, in the pregnancy overall, but particularly in months 3 to 6, the amygdala is coming online for the prenatal infant, and the placenta and the protection for the baby is not yet as complete as it becomes in month 7. So in those middle months of the pregnancy, there can be a taking on of the mother's anxiety can be registered in the baby from the level of cortisol that's in the mom's body. It gets shared particularly in those months. So there can be prenatal experiences of anxiety. We can also experience, especially with attachment trauma, but also with other kinds of trauma, a linking of shame or loneliness or fear with a sense of self. And this linkage can create an ongoing, almost constant experience of living with anxiety. And then we can actually have bodily discomfort that arises from health issues that we read as anxiety. So that can be another kind of root cause if we have digestive issues that are causing us bodily discomfort. We can believe that we are anxious, even if the root cause is a little simpler. We can also have anxiety and feel anxious about having it. So we can have like archaeological layers of anxiety that build. We can be attempting to anticipate, to have protective forethought, and attempting to anticipate anything that may go wrong in the future to try to bring some sense of safety in the present moment. And we can also have nervous system contracts that cause us to stay in a near constant state of vigilance and anticipation. But our resonating self-witness can learn, first of all, to exist, and secondly, can learn how to hold our fearful and anxious self. But for some reason, this is bringing me some tears today. I think it's because it's been a long road to move in this direction. The place that I started from, there was no resonating self-witness at all. And the experience of the surprise of beginning to turn toward myself with warmth and feeling such a change in what it's like to be alive brings me a tremendous amount of relief, and also I think a deep worry and a longing for this information to reach the world a little more widely, because it takes a little while. You know, it takes about, when you start to work with this material, when you first start to work with it, there can be like enormous ahas and reliefs. And then as you begin to work with it daily and weekly, there's a real bump at about 8 months, and then another huge bump at like 3 years, and then another really huge bump at 5 years. So we're talking about, you know, supporting neural growth and the nourishment of new connections and new neurons. So it would be lovely to get more people be able to begin. So now I'm going to stop the screen share and we'll come back to it at the end. Just noticing that there's somebody on the chat who wrote that they had a strong reaction to the linkage of shame or fear or loneliness with a sense of self, and that there's panic breathing. So just wanting to acknowledge that, and to say to anyone who's experiencing this, no wonder you are experiencing this, because would your body like some acknowledgement that you have had experiences that led you to believe that there was something that was wrong with you, or that the world was not safe? Would you like some acknowledgement that you have had real interactions with real humans where you have received information that has led you to believe this, that it's like a conviction that's lodged in your cells? And wouldn't it be sweet to know that these convictions that lodge in our cells are our very best effort to understand and decode the traumas that live in the people around us and the way that they reflect them to us. And it has very little to do with anything that has to do with the self. And just acknowledging that the world maybe doesn't feel safe, and that the world maybe hasn't been safe. So just speaking to everybody in the room, so to speak, that is having this experience. And so now what I'd like to do is to move to connecting. I guess what we should do is stop and collect questions for a moment, Carolyn. Yes.
Yeah, I was just going to say there's a couple more comments coming through that you might want to look at.
And then there's one that says, are we willing to address connections between general anxiety and PTSD? Yes. The more trauma that we've experienced, the more anxiety there can be in our bodies, or the more we had an experience of trauma where we wished we had been aware beforehand, the more there can be a contract that creates hypervigilance. So it can be a PTSD response from the burden of the sheer burden of the number of traumas. And it can also be a nervous system contract that arises as the result of one very dangerous event. Yeah. So we'll if that arises, then we'll speak of it. And if it doesn't arise in our demos, then please ask again at the end, and there may be something that I can reference in the demos. The next question says, from Amanda, the bumps at 8 months, 5 years, 3 years, never heard that. Super resonant for me. I think I'm at the 5-year mark. Can you say more about those timelines? The timelines to me seem to be about the movement of knowledge from the hippocampus in the migration to the cortex. I don't know about the 8-month mark, but it seems to be very strong with people when they begin to do this work. So I don't know what neural event that might be connected with. But the 3-year mark is the time that it takes knowledge to migrate from the hippocampus out into the cortex. So at about 3 years, the knowledge is leaving a concentrated point and becoming widely distributed throughout the brain. And I think that wide distribution of understanding of relational neuroscience and resonant empathy creates something very different that we're living within. And then on the 5-year mark, I don't know what the neural events are there either, but it's something that I've noticed quite strongly with people. So there we go on that. And then someone just said, would you explain to help me understand the term body-based resonant language? So body-based resonant language is the experience of, so body-based resonant language is where we're using language that's right hemisphere language and speaking directly to and concerning the body sensations that we have. And for those of you who are really interested in resonant language, there's actually a class that you can do with as many people as you want to for the same price to be able to practice together in pairs or in trios or small book study groups or whatever. And there we go. It'll take you all the way through all the different kinds of resonant language and how to practice it. So there are more questions here. And I think what I'd like to do is to take those questions after we do the demos in that last half hour so that we get to have enough time to really sink into what this work is like, and you'll be able to experience and hear and have some resonance with the folks who are willing to be in live interaction with this. And Leslie, are you willing to be our person to start us? And Carolyn, are you willing to unmute? Oh, there's Leslie. Great. Leslie, what would you love to experience with your anxiety tonight?
That's a very broad question. Never to experience it again? How's that? No. Sarah asked for a little bit of information beforehand. And what I shared a little bit is that my experience right now, 3 or 4 years ago, I had extremely bad anxiety to the point where I sought medication for it. But I'm not in that place anymore. So I don't have, compared to perhaps a lot of people on this call, extreme anxiety. So I just kind of want to name that up front. I guess, and I have 2 very different flavors. One is a body experience without a lot of thought. And you described that a little bit, like I'm just feeling like I'm in the middle of an emergency, but I don't think there are any tigers coming. So why do I feel like I'm in the middle of an emergency? That tends to pass with distraction, but it would be nice if that didn't happen. The other kind is like what you were talking about, the midnight rumination kind of thing that you can't turn off. And you're pretty sure you're never going to make any money ever again, or that kind of thing. And I guess I would like perhaps a way to interrupt that a little bit more effectively.
Okay.
Just to speak in terms of what seems kind of actionable in this call.
Yeah. Do you, as you're talking about the 2 flavors, do you feel shadows of either of those in your body?
Just doing a compare and contrast. They're very similar sensations. I would say the emergency one is like it's got a lower tone or note, a pitch that's a lower note, and the other one's got a higher note.
So you can.
But they're both like rising feelings off of my hands, off of my shoulders, and off of my temples, like this.
Which one is more alive in this moment?
Probably the rumination one. It's funny. I mean, it's hard. It's a little apples and oranges because the emergency one, it almost has a little meaning of "don't look at me." That lower note.
Yeah.
Whereas the anxiety is like, "Look at me, look at me, look at me." I mean, that's its whole message, right? So they're kind of different, but I would say the worry one.
Okay. So as we step kind of into the worried one, let's do just a little bit of an installation of resonating self-witness before we do anything else. Let's create a little bit of sort of anchoring into the future with resonant support. So first of all, let's find out if your body most responds to being spoken to directly, or if it needs, Leslie to be spoken to as a whole. So where's the sensation first? The most intense sensation as we're stepping into this? Is it your hands? Is it your shoulders? Is it your temples?
So the sensation of the worry.
Mm-hmm.
Probably the most is the sense of energy going up straight up the temples here, with the top of the hands not far behind.
Okay.
But yeah, probably that's the strongest.
Mm-hmm. So Leslie's temples, are you boiling with thoughts and plans and efforts to make Leslie safe? Is there so much effort, brain effort, being put into creating safety for Leslie? And what does this sensation do in response?
Having a little trouble tracking.
Okay.
I felt a lot of the words weren't matching, and I got caught on the words.
Yeah.
And then I tried to go back to just the sensations, and now I'm trying to do two or three things, and I can't quite focus.
So those words were not the words.
Yeah, mostly not. The word boiling didn't quite, there were a bunch of them that didn't quite match, so I was trying to translate, and then I got lost.
Right. Do you want, are there words that work for what's happening there that's making the...
When I really just step out of the mental chatter and just go into the sensation, it feels, it actually feels like the chatter is a way to process the fact that underneath it, there's a panic. And if I just worry about money, then it's better than being in a panic, oddly enough. I had never noticed that before.
Right.
Merely worrying about money. And to give it a bunch of words and ideas and scary pictures is better than whatever the actual panic underneath it is. So the feeling feels like heat, and it feels like the side effect of a lot of fear. Yeah.
So then, I want to follow that road But before I follow that road, I want to give people a little bit of a sense of what the resonating self-witness in the future does. So see whether the panic is about the present moment or if it's about anything in the future.
Mostly future. I'd say 80% future, 20% present. But the future is like really close, like the next minute.
Right, right.
So then, but definitely the future. Like this thing is going to happen like right
whatever
there.
It is. Yeah, it's going to happen in the next minute. So allowing yourself to bring the part of you that has total grounded stability and self-understanding to time travel to 1 minute from now, to catch you, to just keep being there 1 minute from now, so that there's this sense of ongoing, slightly in the future, catching of this as yet unknown panic. Just a part of you that's able to say, yes, this is panic. And I'm here.
So it's really interesting. It took me a little while to like take your words and turn it into an experience. But once I did, I went, oh, that's kind of wonderful. And then the next thing I came up against was that a sense of violating some promise.
Interesting.
By having this feel better or having it work better.
Oh.
It happened like, oh, no, you can't feel better about this. No. Oh. So they're like going like, but part of me is like, oh, this is better. This is more this feels better. Oh, no, better not feel better. So they're kind of tracking each other a little bit.
Wonderful. Well, that gives us a little bit of a direction to explore, to see whether your body is willing for us to understand what the promise is.
Okay.
Well, that in itself is a violation of the vow. So the vow then would be something, the start of it would be something like, I, Leslie, solemnly swear to my own essential self that I will be forever panicked.
Yeah. It's something like, in order to honor the scary thing, whatever that is, which I don't know.
Yeah.
But in order to honor that, because it feels like there's something kind of sacred there.
Yeah.
And I don't know if you want to go down this direction. I know this is a demo and I really honor that. But I get images of my mom really strongly.
Oh.
With that.
Well, it's very important. Of course I want to honor it and go there. When you say, is it her panic?
My first stab at it is it's my panic for her. My fear for her.
Makes perfect sense.
Yeah.
Does your body need acknowledgement that there was an essential instability that gave very good reason for panic?
Yeah, it's the more I give it attention, the more I can feel the underlying love that's there. You know, that, I mean, that feeling you have when you see a kid start to totter out into a street and you're like, ah, right? I mean, it's just a normal human gesture of something out of my hands that I would like to like intervene and keep from happening. Um, and to just really honor that gesture of wanting to catch someone in a disaster it's love. It's really love.
Yeah.
It's really interesting.
Yeah.
This is all kind of new territory for me. I mean, my mom is no new territory, but seeing my fear this way is very new.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So the more I can just sort of see it as someone watching a disaster unfold.
Yeah.
And wanting to catch someone you're not going to catch.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Does it feel like you would like to go into just to check out a vow to see whether is that a direction that you enjoy, to give it words and release yourself from it? Or does it feel really good just to touch it in this way? I don't want to take you in a direction you don't want to go.
Thank you for that question. It like, you know, like every step there's like this invitation to changing it, and then the loyalty thing goes, no. So thank you for asking. I very much appreciate that. I actually really feel like particularly the constraints of this situation, and what I would want to do inside myself with respect to respecting this. It actually just feels really good to stay with this awareness.
Wonderful.
And to just really honor that human movement I had for my mom, that we have, that is a human movement. I think I want to be with that a little bit before moving on to releasing and all that stuff.
Yes.
Yeah.
I know that you're very well acquainted with the vow work. I didn't put the vow work into this into the slides, so I'll add a little bit about it in the classroom for people, and we may run into it later in the call as well. But just to say that we make these nervous system contracts with ourselves out of deep, deep love for our parents, for our grandparents, for siblings, and they are hugely important and deeply sacred. And so, Leslie, what I would love to do to create a little balance for your nervous system is for people who had a need met or a gift received to be able to write what need was met or gift was received for them in the chat. Would you be willing for people?
Oh, that's so sweet.
Yeah. So please, everybody, go to the chat and put in the needs that were met or the gifts that were received. And Leslie wrote care, and Forrest wrote need met for beauty, and Jenny wrote honesty, authenticity, vulnerability. And Blaze and Greg and Ron wrote insight, understanding, and learning. Kiki, authenticity. And there are many more.
Yeah, there's all now they're coming through. Yeah. There are a bunch of them.
For you to get to see them, Leslie. So thank you very much for being willing.
Thank you, everybody, for being witnesses. I know it's kind of invisible witnesses in a way, given the format, but I appreciate the chat invitation you gave to people.
Yeah, I'm so grateful to the community for being responsive and for everyone responding. Yeah. Oh, there's so many more.
I'll scroll back up. I'll read them.
Thank you. Anything else you'd like to say before we transition, Leslie?
My mom died a long time ago, and I love my mom.
Yeah.
So thank you for being a witness to her and me. I appreciate that.
Wonderful. So now we'll put Leslie back on mute and we'll see if Sarah's willing to do something with us with her anxiety. And let's see. There we go.
Yes.
Hi, Sarah. Thank you for being on.
Hi.
Hi. Thank you so much. And what would you like us to look at with your anxiety?
I really resonated with what Leslie said, particularly about the anxiety feeling like it's just a constant buzzing in my body, and it kind of pulses. Like sometimes it gets more intense, and then but it always feels like it's this underlying sense that like I have to be vigilant. I can't make a mistake, and I need to be vigilant about how I'm being seen, perceived. Just this idea that it has to be right or else. But sometimes, and that's not what the part that I resonated with what Leslie was saying was this, like sometimes there's no, like I feel the feeling and then I have to try to find the word, like why am I feeling this way? Like there doesn't seem to be anything that I should be worried about.
Right.
There's nothing happening.
Right.
And yet it's just in me. And occasionally it feels like this like tingling pulse that goes in my chest, and then it's like a shooting, and it's like almost like a startle, and then I'm like, what am I worried about? Like what's going on in my life right now that I should be terrified about? Because it feels like there's a reason.
Yeah. I have a question first for your body. Does your body need any acknowledgement that it has lived under scrutiny?
Yes.
Yeah. And whose scrutiny has it lived under?
My father. Well, both of my parents, but mostly my father's.
Mostly your father. Is there any particular moment in time that comes to mind?
It was pretty constant, but I have this like memory when you say that of me home from school and my cousin Amy is visiting, but my dad walks in and he looks over his shoulder. He looks through this little peephole thing we have in the hallway that looks into the kitchen, and sees me reaching for a brownie.
Oh.
And just attacks, like just, I don't remember the words exactly, but it was just this like, what are you doing? Like just this jump anger thing, and then him catching that my cousin was actually there and his whole demeanor changing. Like he was like, he went into a shame spiral, like oh, someone saw me being that way, and that's what popped up.
Yeah, let's do a little rescue for this moment, and then I have another question, but let's make sure we catch this moment. Is that okay?
Mm-hmm.
And do we have your younger self's consent to time travel to her?
Yes.
Okay, so we'll just freeze the kitchen, freeze your father, freeze your cousin, and you and I will step through time and space to be with this younger Sarah in this moment of, like, I'm imagining adrenaline and confusion and overwhelm and tenderness and worry and shame. Yeah.
Yes.
How's the young Sarah's body doing? We have traveled to.
When you named all of those things, it relaxed a bit.
She likes having her experience named.
Yeah, to be seen. There's something in there about like, it was never acknowledged. It was just free for all.
Yeah.
In nobody, mom, nobody ever acknowledged that it was, that there was some, that it wasn't okay.
Uh-huh. So an acknowledgement in this moment of the burden of living with your father's nervous system. Am I understanding a
Oh,
little?
God, yes.
Uh-huh.
And unpredictable, angry.
Unpredictable and angry.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It goes, and I can feel it right now. It lives in my kidneys a lot. I know that seems weird, but it goes right into my lower back.
Oh. So I'm just going to ask. It may not be the right trail at all, but anxiety in Sarah's body. Did you need to hide in order for Sarah to be safe?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yes.
Mm.
If I showed any resistance, facial expression, distaste, upsetness with his words that weren't in line with what he needed to see in the moment or wanted to see in the moment, it could easily go violent.
Yeah. Yeah. So we're just going to say, thank you, Sarah's anxiety, for hiding so well, for going so far away from Sarah's face, about as far away from Sarah's face as you can get.
Mm.
Yeah. What happens with the sensation in the kidneys?
He kind of dissipated a little bit out like this.
And
It's there, but it's kind of breathed a little bit.
uh-huh. And is there any movement that we're experiencing towards sorrow?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah. Is there a sadness at the acknowledgement of the cost of living with a nervous system that's unpredictable and angry?
Mm-hmm. All the time.
All the time. And living all the time, or the sorrow is all the time?
Living all the time.
Living all the time.
Yeah. The constantness of the
Yeah.
experience.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah. And what's happening for the one in the kitchen? How's she doing?
Sad.
Mm-hmm.
Grateful to be seen. I think there was a piece of it that there was a witness. My cousin was the first witness.
Yeah. Yeah. It seems like a watershed moment,
Mm-hmm.
a real turning point
Mm-hmm.
for validation of reality.
Oh gosh, yes.
Yeah. And the creation of memory.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It's because she acknowledged it afterwards.
Mm.
That this isn't right.
Yeah.
So I think there's, she's feeling, she's really sad and she's just really wishing she could go away.
Well, you can tell her, if you would like, that she can come with you and that you don't live in your father's house anymore. And that she can come be in your heart if she would like, if it feels like a good place.
She'd like to go with Amy too. She just would love to go.
Uh-huh.
She would love to go stay with Amy.
Oh, does that feel good to your body for her to go?
Mm-hmm.
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 And never have to go back.
Never have to go back. You can tell her, you already survived this. We already lived through it once. We don't need to live through it again. Yeah. And she can go with Amy. And then just Send them both to Amy's house, maybe. Yeah. And tell me, how is your body doing?
Relaxed.
Mm-hmm.
There's a little bit of joy and a lot of relief.
A little bit of joy.
Being able to be myself at Amy's house without worry of that.
Mm. And how is present time Sarah's body?
Relaxed. Mm-hmm. Much more my hands feel like they've been like this, and they just, there's a whole dropping.
Mm. And is there still any anxiety that's here in your body that wants us to be in relationship with it?
There's still a little bit of the buzzing, but it's, there's a little bit of a buzzing, the underlying buzzing that's always there.
Let's just touch on it since we're here.
Okay. Can you hear me okay? There's a printer all of a sudden going off behind me.
I'm hearing you just great.
Okay.
I'd like to know the underlying buzzing that's always there. Does it feel like it's been there since you were born, since before you were born? What's your sense of always?
After 6 years old.
Something happened when you were 6?
Yeah, I don't know what it was though. I've got some real heat over here.
In your right shoulder?
Yeah, kind of like under my armpit.
Oh.
Right, like a heat and like a. Yes.
Okay.
Right about between 5 and 6.
It's the heat in the armpit. It's a place where people grab children. Does it feel like the after effects of somebody grabbing this child body?
You know, what came into my head though was it's when things really flipped in my house when I was little. My mom became born again Christian. And my dad didn't. And yeah, there's a real, when I see the burning's back and it's like it is under this arm, but it's like.
So if we were again, it feels like a movement through time and space is needed to me. Let's try it and see. Is that okay?
Yes.
And do we have your 6-year-old's permission to travel to her?
Mm-hmm.
So stepping through time and space to this little one and just making this first guess of something like, is it so hard that your parents don't see the world the same way?
Yeah, there's more, it's confusing. There's more fighting, and there's my mom, there's just so much. My mom became terrified of my father not being saved.
Oh.
And there was a new terror in the house.
Oh. And is that terror in your body?
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Brings me tears for some reason.
Yeah, there was a lot of, he's going to die and go to hell.
Yeah.
and burned.
So scared for your dad.
I was very, yeah.
So scared for his eternal soul. So scared for him to be burning forever.
And everybody.
And for everybody. Yeah. A horror at the magnitude of the danger, the peril. How is this little one doing with us talking to her?
She's a little nervous that she's not supposed to be talking about it. That she's out betraying her.
Uh-huh.
I think there's the fear that now that if she does something wrong, there's fear, there's anxious fear and confusion that just not knowing.
Yeah.
Almost like a whose side to be on, but like this, like if I don't know, something like if I'm not terrified, if I don't buy into this, then I'll burn too.
Yeah. The danger is so great.
It's so great.
The cost is so high. Yeah. And the enormity for a child of having to find their way with one parent's body so convinced and another parent's body so not convinced. How does the child find a resting place? How does she do
that? Acknowledgement that there was no resting place for her created some sense of feeling understood and ease in her body.
And does it feel like there's more here with her body tension that needs to be acknowledged?
I think there just needs to be acknowledgement that there was significant change that was something like being presented as a gift and as something good that felt really bad.
Yeah.
And yet wanting to be part of it. Just a lot of confusion. Just acknowledgement of a lot of confusion.
So much torment. Yeah. And so many different levels of messaging. Here's a gift. This is a good thing. You'll burn in hell. Everybody's going to burn in hell who doesn't believe this. My father is going to burn in hell. My father doesn't believe this. I shouldn't talk about it. Just so many layers. Have I missed any of the layers for her?
No, I think there's a real loss of fun from before.
A loss of fun. Oh.
And the house was a kind of a party house, and there was all kinds of people coming and going and smoking homemade cigarettes, and there was kind of joyfulness there. And my mom and dad were like, I mean, I don't think they necessarily all got along, but there was a different feeling.
Yeah.
There was music that was secular music that all went away.
Oh. So acknowledging the loss as well, the losses of joy and music and dancing and goofing off and
connection with my dad.
Connection with your dad.
Oh, there it is. Yeah, because he stopped coming home.
Oh.
And everything got angry.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Mm. How's that little one doing?
I feel relaxed. She feels.
Do you want to invite her to come be in your heart? Do you want to make parties with her?
Yeah, I think she wants to go make forts and have safe places to play.
Oh, nice. Very nice.
Mm-hmm.
Mm.
Yeah, have safe places to play.
Uh-huh. So as you bring her to a place where she can play and be safe and make forts, just notice how your body's doing.
Much more relaxed.
Uh-huh.
The burning's gone.
Oh. Wow. Mm. Is this a good place for today? Okay. And once again, community, let's balance Sarah's body by going ahead and putting in the chat the needs that were met or gifts that were received from her working with us and being present with us. And the honor of stepping in to connection here. Oh, reconnection with Father, resonance, depth, discovery, courage, shared reality. Need nourished as connection, tenderness and safety, clarity, body connection to emotions, memories, and more. I'll let you go ahead and read them, Sarah. Thank you.
Thank you.
Anything you'd like to say before we transition?
I'm loving reading these.
Mm.
I'm really appreciating that, your work. So.
Thank you, Sarah.
Thank you, Sarah.
So grateful for you to help tonight. Thanks. And we'll get Carolyn to put you on mute, and we'll take Catherine off mute and see what we can touch on to give our community a little sense of working with anxiety. Is that all right with you, Catherine?
Sure.
Okay.
I'm not sure that I have anything that's super different from Sarah's. So, but I'll just say a little bit about it and then tell me what you think.
Okay.
I have it's a tension in my belly that happens when I might be a little bit late or when too many things are happening at once, and it just tenses up. And I just realized in you talking with Sarah that it's right around the corner from where I get my back pain, when I get my back pain.
Very interesting.
And I do get my back pain when I'm stressed. So it's funny that I never I knew that there was the connection, but I didn't think that there was so much the connection between the anxiety. It feels connected to I have to do something. And when you use the word scrutiny, that really, it was like scrutiny. And everything at my house was kind of on the down low in terms of emotions, and you couldn't raise your voice, but there was this kind of volcano of, I think, anger from my dad. And so I don't know what it is, but as you were talking to Sarah, I was thinking about the time when I was 13 and I had gone to this, was sent to this girls' school in the 7th grade, which was called junior high back then. And I was not prepared, and all the other girls had gone to Catholic schools, which was the only private school education, and I was not prepared. So I had ADD and it was not diagnosed. And I think that was the time when I started to really get that there was something wrong with me. There's something wrong with me, and I better do everything right. I don't know how to do everything right. Because I'm behind and I can't study and I can't learn like other people learn. And my dad, who was extremely left-brained, out of no fault of his own, just tried to kind of keep me up late and drill me on math, which was my worst subject. And he was raised in the military, and so he had a very military way of doing things. And everybody else in the family seemed to be doing just fine in school, and I had this dread that there was really something wrong with me, and I was not going to be able to survive or something.
Yeah. So if we were to step through time and space, would that be okay with this little one?
Yeah.
Yeah. And freeze your father. And what's your sense of Catherine's body?
It's hard. It's a little bit hard now because I'm getting two visuals at the same time.
Okay.
I'm getting being in the room with him trying to teach me how to be better at math, which did not work at all. I just totally shut down. And then I have another visual right after he died. I don't know, maybe it was 6 or 7 months later. And I'm lying on my bed and all I can do is stare at the ceiling and feel lost and dead and hearing voices downstairs and not knowing that I exist.
Now let's see what happens if we focus on you in the bed.
Okay.
Yeah. See if
Okay.
it narrows to one. If it doesn't, we can do empathy for both of them.
Okay.
So you and I, stepping through time and space, can we sit on her bed with her? Or should we pull up chairs or sit on the floor?
Sitting on the bed would be nice. It's a little close, but it'd be nice. Yeah. Yeah. There's cracks in the plaster. And I just really want to look at those cracks. That's really all I can see.
Maybe I will lie down on the floor and look at the ceiling with her, and you can sit on the bed.
Okay.
So that she has somebody looking at the ceiling with her.
Okay.
Yeah.
I remember those cracks, yeah.
Yeah.
And there's a vase of flowers on the dresser that were sent by the school, the girls' school. And I didn't understand why anybody would send me flowers.
Oh, so confusing, huh?
It was like, wow, why would they send me flowers?
Just a bewilderment about the world.
Yeah, about everything.
About everything.
Yeah, and somehow I'm responsible.
Yeah. Does it feel, so I'm going to say to her, does it feel like you did something wrong?
Yeah, I wanted him to die.
Oh.
I had that thought once, that if he died, then I would not be under the scrutiny and I wouldn't be grounded. I was grounded all the time. I didn't go to any dances. I didn't go ride horses or any of the things I love to do. I was always grounded because I couldn't learn.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I was stupid.
Oh.
Yeah.
So I wonder if it might be important to acknowledge the weight of responsibility and worry and shame. And is it like absolute? It sort of feels like there are no chinks in it. It's an absolute sense of responsibility. Is that anything like what she's feeling?
Yeah. It's kind of like there's no way out. I can't learn. Everybody that I know in school doesn't like me. And all the teachers don't like me, and I'm being a smartass to try to get attention because I don't know what else to do, and I can't learn this stuff, and I can't, you know.
Does she need acknowledgement that's like running into a wall over and over again?
Yeah. Running into an abyss.
Into an abyss over and over again. She falls into the abyss, and then somehow she's back running again into the abyss again.
Yeah, and there must be something really wrong with me.
Do you need acknowledgement of how convinced you are that there's something wrong?
Yeah. Although I don't really have like a cognitive sense of it, it's more like a body heaviness. That there's a problem and it must be me.
There's a
because I'm so stupid.
problem.
And I guess somehow these adults have an expectation that I'm going to go from this, you know, kind of crappy public school and try to make it where everybody else is like way ahead of me.
So not only is there the ADHD, but there's also the chasm in educational experience.
Yeah, it's hopeless.
Yeah.
It's hopeless. And I have to try to do something, but I don't know what to do. And I'm just trying to link that up with the anxiety, the nervousness that I feel.
We'll just say to this little one, no wonder you are paralyzed. This is too much for a little one to deal with on their own.
Yeah.
And let's see what happens for her body when we say, it may not be time yet, but I'd like to try to say, Catherine, did you know that your brain works a little differently? and then nobody's catching it. Nobody's taking care of you.
The idea that anybody would care enough to notice that is a laugh, you know, and a shock and a cry, you know.
Yeah. What happens for the little one on the bed looking at those cracks on the ceiling?
Well, she never thought of that. That wasn't one of the options. Yeah.
So she's starting to feel a little less dead?
Yeah. Yeah.
What's going on with her body for our next empathy guess?
Well, she's kind of looking around now and looking at you on the floor. Oh, there's other people here. Yeah. I think that she would like acknowledgement that she was punished for not being able to keep up. Oh, yeah. That she was punished. She was grounded. She didn't get to do what other kids got to do.
No.
That she couldn't keep up. Somehow this idea of keeping up, it's like, you better hurry up. Yeah.
Can she hear your voice acknowledging what happened for her?
Yeah, it's such a surprise to have anybody notice anything about her. Because she kind of didn't think she existed. Other than to try to be something that somebody else wanted her to be.
Right. And what's her body doing now?
Her body is thinking, well, maybe there's another way of being alive that is different than this scenario that's in front of me now. Maybe there's another way of being in the world.
I wonder if she would love to know that you became a painter.
Yeah, that would be cool. Yeah, she liked to do paint by numbers. That was like that was it on the on the artistic expression in the house.
So she would be delighted to know.
Yeah, yeah, and a good painter.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Mm.
yeah.
And I wonder if she would like to come back to be with you.
Ah, yes, that would be wonderful.
Mm.
Wonderful.
And Sarah's little one had a sense of going and playing in safe places, and cousin, and this one may come. She may come and get to see your paintings. She might wander around. She might enter your heart. I often have a sense of them just kind of melting into my heart. These little ones left behind.
Yeah, yeah.
What's your sense? A sense of her melting into your heart.
Yeah. Yeah, she doesn't have to achieve
No.
the unachievable. What a concept. Yeah. Oh, thank you. That's wonderful.
How is that sense of the belly, and the movement?
Very relaxed.
Okay.
Everything is very relaxed.
Okay. Wonderful.
Yeah, beautiful. Thank you so much,
Catherine. So, and again, just inviting our community to help us reclaim Catherine's body to being one of us. Because when we do vulnerable and deep work in front of other people, it's almost like in our human societies, we believe that we owe the people a debt who held us. And when we let people know the gifts that they gave us and the needs that were met by us doing our work, then it evens our bodies back out and we get to be held again. And Satori wrote, beauty, brilliance, and ease. And the joy of being seen, being believed, softens the armor of my heart. Awe and wonder, deep resonance, the gift of feeling free, the need for little ones to be warmly accompanied. And I'll let you read the rest, Catherine. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Sarah.
Yeah. Anything else from you before we transition?
No, I'm just feeling really good.
Okay, thank you. So now I'll take you back to our slides for a little minute. You can see the slide. And here's a body-based self-empathy process for you that's very much what we were doing with as we were time traveling. And we didn't do this with the future time traveling, but the same thing that we were doing with Sarah and with Catherine in time traveling to the past, we can do to the future. So if we're anticipating a test, we can time travel to our body in the future and do empathy, body-based empathy, based on what's happening in the body for the future event. Or if we're terrified, one of the things that happens for me is I get terrified for the well-being of people that I love. I wake up at 3 o'clock in the morning and I'm terrified for their well-being. And in those cases, the intensity is so great that I actually physically imagine swaddling my heart with a band of light. You know how when you swaddle babies and you wrap them quite snugly in a soft flannel blanket, then there's a kind of a sense of compression and being held, and often they'll stop crying. And I do have this sense with my heart as I bring this snug, warm, resonant acknowledgement to wrap around it, that gradually I'm able to move through very intense experiences of being terrified for the people that I love. Now, I cannot know why everyone showed up or why everybody who will be listening to the recording is listening, but I do hope that you have a sense that what we're touching here is learnable stuff, that we're thinking about the way that brains work in relationship, we're learning the importance of resonant language, that this this work, this movement, this commitment to self-warmth and understanding, to resonance rather than reassurance. Because you noticed that as we time traveled, we didn't ever hear the words, little one, you're going to be all right. That was not where we went. We went to resonance. We went to acknowledging what was true for the little ones, not to reassuring them. And that acknowledgement of what is really true is what starts to change bodies and change brains. And that this is something that's accessible and available for everybody. And that the reason I wrote that book was so that people could start to learn this on their own without spending barely any money and not having to go to workshops and not having to go. And that's part of the reason that this call for tonight and for this month is a free call for people. To get this out so that we can begin to live a little bit more easily. And the practice can be done with yourself, and there are free resources and meditations on my website, yourresonantself.com. And there's also a store where there's old recordings, and then there's Facebook. And one of my favorite things is that people have been taking pictures of the book all over the world and sending them on Facebook. So there's pictures of the book on bedside tables in the Middle East and in Asia and in Europe and in the US and in Canada. It's so fun. And then there's the online learning. There's the Intro to Resonant Language, which is already pre-recorded and you can just do it at your own speed. There's past webinars. And then for those of you who want accompaniment with me going through the book, there's a chapter by chapter weekly study group. It's not weekly because I travel so much, but it happens once a week, sometimes twice a month, sometimes once a month. And that class is 15 sessions using Zoom on Thursdays from 8 to 8:55 a.m. PST, which means it can be attended in Europe as well. The dates are spread out over 9 months because I'm traveling so much. And in addition, if you enroll in that, you get to have access to the monthly IPNB and empathy webinars where I look at the latest research on various issues. You can learn more on my website at empathybrain.com. Wonderful. That is our slideshow. Yay. So now we're open for any questions. And it says, there's a question from one of the participants who says, do we have time to witness the future process? So I don't think we do tonight. We'll see how many other questions there are, but for imagination of it, what you do is you imagine yourself, you find out how far in the future you need to go. You see what the place is where you are so worried, and you send just like we time traveled past into the past, we time travel into the future and Leslie says Sarah did it a little with me. So yeah, I did a little with you. We went 1 minute into the future. That's right. Thank you, Leslie. And I just wonder if there are any other questions. There were some that were in the beginning that we didn't get a chance to answer.
There was one question, I think it was actually from Leslie, about how this relates to attachment.
Oh, okay. So the way that this relates to attachment is that when children are securely attached, they carry within them an internalized resonating self-witness that's so constant that they don't even know that that resonating self-witness is there. It's created or nourished by a constant experience of the mother being in sync with the baby and able to reflect non-verbally and with facial expressions what the baby's emotions are. By the age of 4 months, our little baby faces stop reflecting the emotions that mother cannot reflect. We limit ourselves by the age of 4 months exactly to the emotional facial expression vocabulary that our mother has. So if she doesn't ever reflect grief, then we learn not to have grief on our faces. If she doesn't ever reflect anger, then we learn not to have anger on our faces. She could even be angry herself, but if she's not able to reflect and resonate with the baby's anger, even at all, then the baby stops doing anger. And so this is kind of the groundwork of these early nervous system contracts. And the wider the window of welcome that our mother has for emotions, the more we are accompanied non-verbally and understood and acknowledged in our experience. And this experience of being acknowledged and resonated with brings the neurons that make the resonating self-witness, the neurons that are built between prefrontal cortex and amygdala, to hold our emotional life with gentleness and resonance, because we're integrating the neurons that our mother has that hold her. So that's about 50% of the population has this experience of secure attachment. There are other interesting things about this, but for the rest of us, we get to have earned secure attachment. We get to have these experiences of gradually growing the neurons of resonance and of acknowledgement that allow our brains to be transformed. So in effect, what we're doing as we begin to practice this is we're beginning to create a secure attachment with ourselves, even if we never got to have it with our parents. And what's so wonderful about human brains is that they complexify throughout our lifespan, all the way until we're 97 years old on our deathbed. They're complexifying from the experience of relationship and resonance. So it's kind of hellish to come out of childhood without the internalized support, but happily for humans, we can build and nourish this internalized support ourselves as we move into these practices and understandings. So that's the connection with attachment. Was that somewhat clear? Great, thank you.
I also noticed a question earlier about it says, how do I find the classroom, which you've mentioned a couple times.
We'll send out instructions that let you know how to get to the classroom. First, we're going to send out, the classroom will become available a little bit later, and the recording itself will come out in a way that you don't have to access the classroom. But I mentioned some resources that we would put in the classroom. So if you would like access to the classroom, send me an email at info@empathybrain.com and or info@yourresonantself.com, and we will set you up before it becomes widely available. And then there's a question about manipulating the default mode network through medications that affect 5-HTA. Would that hinder the work we do with self-resonance? I do not know the answer to that question. I do not know. I'm very sorry. And then there's a thank you from someone else. Don't know if there are any other questions. Did you see any other questions, Carolyn? Okay.
No, I haven't seen any others.
Well, I'm very grateful to everyone who came on this call, and grateful to the folks who are going to be watching it as a recording. And I'm so incredibly grateful to the folks who were willing to do their work with us so that we could begin to feel what this work feels like with human bodies. How do we change and affect human bodies? So grateful. And I'll stay on a little bit because once we hang up, the chat disappears, and I'd love to see any comments that people have about needs that were met or gifts that were received. And for anybody else who would like to go, including the panelists, just so much gratitude and thank you. And bye for now. It's sweet to see that people are getting hope and having needs met. And hello to kitties. I put my kitties upstairs so that they would be not climbing all over me during this. And where can I find out about this future self-work is a question. And then the wish that this was available to ER doctors. Needs met for hope, connection with body and emotions after being frozen for a while. Thank you for this meaningful sharing. This is the place where we talk about the time travel to the future. So I haven't written about it yet, and so I'm imagining that people will be able to begin to kind of be a little bit creative. You can get the book, you can do the intro to resonant language, and then you can practice what it's like to see what your body's doing in your anticipated experience of the future and make resonant language empathy guesses with your body about how it wants to take care of you, about how it might be worried, about how it may have a sense that there's no action that can be taken that's the right action. Whatever it is, the truth of your body's experience, as you acknowledge it, the body begins to soften a little bit and maybe even allowing itself to be held. And I'll just pause and see if there are any more questions. Oh, thank you so much. All right. Well, we'll pause the record. We'll stop the recording now. Good night, everyone.